February 3rd, 2017 will not only be a symbolic but also a historic day for the Indian capital markets. India's oldest and first equity exchange has got listed in its rival, that is NSE, because self-listing is not allowed. How will things change going forward here on the capital markets with BSE getting listed? What is going to be the roadmap? To discuss all that and much more in detail, we have with us a very special guest, none other than Mr. Ashish Chauhan, MD and CEO of BSE. Mr. Chauhan, firstly, thanks a lot for sparing this time, and as always speaking to ET Now. Clearly, sir, finally the big day has come. BSE shares have got listed in NSE. Clearly, this means a lot because you have been driving this whole process for the last 2 years, and a premium listing happening. How does it feel?
It's basically a feeling of satisfaction that a job well done. In a sense, it has been a long journey. In fact, it's almost 10 years since BSE shares were sort of on offer, and 2007 is when the demutualization happened. And since then, BSE has been trying to list. Now 2017, so 10 years, and I think overall, even if you look back last 1 year, March is when we got the approval. And then we decided that we are not going to dilute the shares of existing shareholders. So we were not going to go out and issue new shares.
It was like an OFS process.
And so we went for OFS, but then we had 9,500 shareholders already. So taking shares from them, allowing them all equal opportunity to sort of deposit their shares for offer for sale, and also then collecting, going through the various AGMs and so on and so forth. So it has been a longish process vis-a-vis most other companies, but I think overall it has been very satisfying.
Mr. Chauhan, if I could ask you, clearly everyone knows that this would have been a premium listing for various reasons. Perhaps the markets were anticipating the 4-digit listing. We all know till yesterday how the grey market was operating on a premium. But for you, clearly, even I had asked you when you had come out with this IPO, clearly there was a strategy. Clearly a strategy to ensure that keep the pricing low and look at the long term perspective, and has that worked?
For us, see, basically BSE is a public institution, it is a public utility, and it should basically provide the confidence to the investors. At the same time, we are also a front-line regulator. So we usually whenever somebody, even when you ask me, my first reaction was that every investor should read the prospectus, study the industry, study the company, and then try to invest, because for us it's absolutely paramount importance. Our basic business is compliance. Profit is only an outcome of doing a good job on compliance, and that's how it has to be very, very long term. It cannot be very short term, and that's how investors who have invested before have actually behaved. And they basically they created a committee of selling shareholders, some of the large, even small shareholders, FIIs, local, and then they discussed with the merchant bankers on what should be the strategy. Merchant bankers took us through practically lots of countries, hundreds of investors. We went one-on-one, and then they created a book. They went to the selling shareholders saying, this is how it looks, and they basically both of them agreed, the merchant bankers and the selling shareholders. That's how this framework came. So we were not that we were not that involved in pricing decision per se, but we were trying to sort of impress upon all parties that let's try to be reasonable and ensure that investors in the overall scheme of things benefit.
But Ashish, clearly it is now come out to be a win-win for all, the kind of premium listing that has taken place with the kind of price band of 805 to 806 that you had kept.
In fact, there were questions. I mean, it's a win-win situation for people who are holding shares, people who are coming afresh. But basically, in a sense, we need to, when I look back, there were shareholders who had been holding shares for very long. Many of them have also not got the returns that they had desired. And similarly, some of the shareholders who have recently bought probably have got better returns. So it's a kind of a what I call mixed feelings for many of our shareholders. But I think it's also existing shareholders have got a relief thing. At least now you have a liquidity, and that was basically the essence of our working hard on that. That pricing for us as employees or as sort of compliance people, pricing is not that important vis-a-vis sort of ensuring that all the activities you have gone through well.
Mr. Chauhan, if I could ask you, as a CEO, would the challenge come now going forward? Every quarter, the results will be out, minutest of details will be looked into, questions will be asked on the margin, the P, so on and so forth. So how do you see things panning out from here, particularly from the balance sheet point of view? What is going to be the strength, or what is going to be that revenue stream that you would be eyeing?
See, basically, as you rightly said, now we will be in sort of more transparent way. See, we had 9,500 shareholders. Even as per regulations, we need to do quarterly results on our website. We do everything that is required of a listed company. But now that we have larger number of shareholders, more sort of spotlight from media also, I think, as you rightly said, we are going to be scrutinized more often and much more in detail, and we should be. See, as a public utility, I have always maintained that the transparency is the best disinfectant. And one of the reasons in back of my mind of listing is also that this kind of public utility, which is also providing services to the same industry, we need to be scrutinized more.
Mr. Chauhan, clearly we all know the strengths, as you have also put it out in your draft DRHP when you filed and during your road shows. Listing is one of the biggest strengths and revenue stream for you. Of course, the mutual fund platform now. So going forward, would volumes, which has always been a challenge for various reasons, and that has been a question which is always asked to BSE, what about the volumes? Would that be an area of focus? Because certainly volumes also in more than one sense becomes a benchmark when it comes to looking at exchange and so on and so forth.
See, basically many times our perceptions of the past tend to make us think that is the reality. The world shifts pretty soon, pretty fast without our knowledge. And so when BSE in 2000 or for that matter other exchanges in India, that time there was no kind of trading volume, was not a great concept in terms of the revenue earner. But last 15, 16 years that has become very large. Does it mean that it will remain in future? It needs to be seen. BSE is more traditional vis-a-vis most exchanges in the world where the derivatives and trading are larger. BSE still has more listing revenues, but the trading revenues are also growing very nicely. For me, trading is not only the volumes which you do. If you look at it strategically or otherwise, BSE has become more an investment exchange. Investments don't trade much.
They not a place
so
for speculation.
It has become an investment exchange. And for that, what happens is you end up, say, raising 1,50,000 crore of bonds in last 7-8 months. Nobody cares. Masala bonds raise 9,000 crore. It's a huge hue and cry. Everyone gets to know. But we raise 15-20 times more. Nobody cares. And for me, slowly people will have to, because if India has to grow at the pace it grows or it wants to grow, it will have to learn to raise funds, get investment culture. See, we have a very nice speculation culture, very nice trading culture, but we also need to have investment culture because people have these funds. Now, of course, you can't keep even cash also. So you will have to create financial assets, you will have to invest in financial assets. And today, BSE is the largest distributor of many of these activities, whether it's mutual funds, it's the largest distributor of mutual funds, if it's bonds. 1,50,000 crore is practically 1/3 of all the funds raised in bonds, So similarly, IPOs, offer to buy, offer to sell, everywhere BSE sort of seems to be much larger. In terms of trading volume, because we didn't do derivatives in 2000, we kind of left behind, and then when you trade derivatives, you also trade equities there. But effectively, our prices are not very different from all the other people's prices. And understanding is that over a period, because the technology is superior, cost is lower, service is better, slowly people should start moving.
To be honest, I should congratulate you for, as a CEO, openly saying about the speculation culture that we have in our markets. But sir, going forward from a revenue pie chart, 3 areas or streams where you see primarily, say, next 3 to 5 years, your revenues are coming and perhaps that will get enhanced?
See, for us, we have this newer sources. They are still green shoots, mutual funds or bonds or even INX, in India International Exchange. Even we are trying to get into, say, insurance. So we have this sort of small little things coming up. And somewhere, if some of them become large enough that could raise sort of profile or revenues in that direction also. But for the time being, our mainstay is basically in listings, in trading volume, in the transaction charges. We also have a very nice and thriving SME market where we are market leaders. Even FX market, we are now earning reasonable sums compared to our size, our revenues. And so these are some places where we think currently what we can see in foreseeable future, we will have some progress going forward.
Ashish, if I could ask you the one question which is asked to all CEOs from the balance sheet point of view, clearly say next 2 to 3 years, what would be the kind of growth that you would be looking at?
See, for us, our growth is in basically being compliant. If we are very good in compliance, we are generally satisfied. That is what our mandate is. That is what our board is telling us, that first and foremost do that.
As a CEO, you are the most compliant.
And we would want to do it that way because, see, the investment situation and being a regulator ourselves, we have to be much more careful in what we talk, what we do. And when there is a choice between compliance and profit, it will always be compliance. Within that, we have been able to create newer sort of revenue models, newer businesses, and that's what we would want to kind of continue to develop on. And see, this is what I call original fintech. Okay, in 1995, nobody called it fintech, but you moved from this floor to basically screen, and you have not gone out, exploited and explored whatever you can do potentially for yourself and for the country in terms of raising funds, but also various sort of automating very many other things. And that's what, for me, there is a potential is very large. India is not still participating fully into formal finance. Onus has been on BSE, 140 years. We have reached out only to 2% of Indians. We need to reach out to the rest 98. And I think that is what, that is what we take as our failure and our opportunity also, that we have reached only 2%. We have 3.29 crore investors registered with us.
Available out there.
When I go internationally and I say that I have 3.29 crore investors registered with me, people actually go totally bonkers, because at 3.29 crores, if we were a country, we would be probably 20th largest country in the world. But basically still, when I say I have 98% to go, nobody can believe the opportunity we have on hand. And not only in just trading, in basically ensuring that people have these funds. How do we kind of get them avenues to safely invest in variety of activities based on their risk profile? And that is what basically should be the job of an exchange.
Mr. Chauhan, if I could ask you, clearly perhaps maybe 1 quarter after 2 quarters, there will be a benchmark where NSE will also be listed going forward in BSE. They have already filed the TRHP. But looking at that whole aspect, we all know NSE in terms of valuation, the kind of numbers that we are talking about is mind-boggling. How do you see that? Would there be a real competition, or clearly they have their own strengths, you have your own strengths, and perhaps the comparison will not be apple to apple?
I think so. Basically, see, one is on strength, the other is the areas we play in are slightly different. And third thing is we are not in competition. We are in what I call co-opetition. That is, we cooperate most of the time, because I mean, if the markets have to start at 9:15 at both places, we have to cooperate. If they have to close at 3:30, we have to cooperate. Every moment on inspections, investigations, everything is basically coordinated quite heavily. There is, in a sense, people may feel outside that these are competition, but almost the entire work is about being cooperative with each other. Otherwise, markets cannot function in a sort of organized way, and that's what we tend to do. And given the fact that we are focused on areas which perhaps other people are not, in a sense, we will have similar structures in terms of listing fees and transaction charges and data dissemination fees and other income and kind of stuff. But the proportions will vary based on sort of where we focus on, where they focus on, and so on and so forth.
Mr. Chauhan, if I could ask you in that sense, from NSE and your perspective, There's a third exchange, but it's not functioning for various reasons. How big is the space available, or clearly India can only have 2 exchanges and no more anywhere going forward?
See, there are variety of theories on this. Many countries have kind of merged many exchanges. Many countries have actually promoted more exchanges. And we are practically the second largest country in the world. So effectively, if a country with say 1 crore population can have an exchange, how is it that 120 crore should not have, and so on and so forth. But it would depend on government's priorities, how government looks at it in terms of what is the purpose of setting up exchanges, why you want to sort of have multiple exchanges or one, and so on and so forth. And so, for example, Japan has merged Osaka and Tokyo, but then they've allowed one more exchange to come up. Sydney has allowed one more exchange to come up in Australia. And so this is an iterative process. I won't see, and I don't see there is a magic number about how many exchanges you need to have.
Ashish, if I could ask you, I need an honest answer. Clearly, NSE filing the DRHP would, in that more than one ways, give you an opportunity to come out with the right pricing in hindsight. Now you can say there is no silent period, anything, because NSE actually filed the DRHP when you were going through the road shows and before you finalized your. So clearly, in that sense, you got an advantage, or clearly that was a issue or a strategy that went into before you decided the pricing.
How do you decide your strategy based on somebody's activities, right? So you can't anticipate when people would do what they do. You have to do basically on your own strength and your own sort of activities. So for us, the pricing is the last stage. You need to go and tell out your story to people, and they have to also be aware and convinced, because most people have a model of a business. Ours is a slightly offbeat activity compared to the traditional exchanges which people see worldwide. We are one of the older exchanges who have actually survived, like New York Stock Exchanges. Although you call it New York Stock Exchange, it has been taken over twice in the last 15 years by some totally newcomer. We have survived for so many years and continually. In fact, most old exchanges have got somehow merged, remerged, emerged, and so on and so forth. And that's why we have a kind of a different business model vis-a-vis the current existing models. And so you have to explain to people saying this is how the model works. And once they get convinced about the model, then the pricing comes.
Okay. So the one issue which perhaps the brokers are looking at or seeking a clarity, we all know the just declared budget on February 1st, there was an issue raised on unlisted shares if you are tendering via an OFS or during an IPO, with March 2004 being taken as the dateline. There can be perhaps a long-term capital gain that you will have to pay if you have not paid the STT. So some jitters among the brokers. Any clarity on that? Have you sought anything specifically, or it's too early to say how it's?
Currently, it's too early. We need to see final what gets approved and what gets gazetted and so on and so forth. It's just a little sort of currently we have been made aware of the situation by people who have sold the shares and so on and so forth.
You are taking up with the
and we'll have to basically go through the framework and see how we can help the shareholders.
Mr. Chauhan, Gift City is one big idea which has finally taken a shape. It's operational. How crucial that would be for BSE from the entire portfolio perspective, also because you clearly have a first mover advantage there from all aspects. And secondly, how far are you from getting your first commodity exchange operational, because you have been in talks for SEBI for the longest of time?
No, we have been in talk on commodities, and as soon as we get approval, we should be able to start. We have the software, hardware, everything ready. Even the mock trading has been conducted before, and so we are pretty much covered. We have people who have specialized in commodities hired to run that business, and so on and so. As and when the approval comes, we will be able to start in a very, very short period. In terms of the Gift City, for me, it's a very important concept for India. I mean, the way Hong Kong has helped China raise trillions of dollars. In addition to being an international finance center, it has helped basically channelize investments into China, which has helped China become manufacturing center of the world. Gift City can actually play a similar role because it's one country, two systems in Hong Kong and China, which is different. China has a different legal framework. Hong Kong has a British style framework, And so people started moving from Hong Kong into China. Similarly, GIFT City is a separate jurisdiction from all aspects, and if people are able to use that to come into India, to raise funds, also to invest funds and so on and so forth, but that can also basically be used to raise funds for a Ghana company or an Indonesian company to raise funds and so on and so forth. So for me, GIFT City is a very, very interesting idea, and we need to nurture it. We were fortunate to be invited to set up the exchange, and so we are thankful to the government for doing that. But effectively, it's more what government wants to do. We are only basically trying to implement government's vision within whatever little we can do.
Mr. Chauhan, lastly, before we could wrap up, if I could ask you, IPO has been one agenda on your table for after you took over. Finally, that is over. What is the next big thing that Mr. Ashish Chauhan is working on for BSE now?
No, we have several things in the pipeline. Mutual funds is a very large thing. Insurance is an adjacent area, as we call it. It's a little sort of, we were on a simple transaction processing in equities that you trade on pure quantity price and then you clear later on and then you settle. It was very, very standardized. Then mutual funds came, which were a little more complex because you are order routing, you are not matching, and then order will match in the evening with the sort of AMC and so on and so forth. And so we have now done a good job there. We think now there are other areas of financial markets where we can slowly get involved in, and these are all transformational. For me, it's not only about transforming BSE, but it's also transforming India's financial markets. So I have always tried to work on kind of transformational models, that how do we sort of transform the rest of the economy and basically earn a little bit for ourselves.
Okay. My last question, I am asking you this because I have seen various phases of these markets under after you took over BSE. Now with BSE today started trading in NSE, do we also see some kind of much more bonhomie between NSE and BSE, because there have been times where there have not been the best of relations?
No, see, as I told you earlier also in this interview, we are basically cooperating. It may look like that we compete a lot, but large part of our life is about cooperation, and that should continue for the betterment of the market and for actually easy functioning of the market. So that's how we would continue to strive to work in a cooperative manner, and not only between two exchanges, but any other exchange that is allowed to come in, because ultimately if market is there, we are there.
Okay. And one thing, although this was very controversial, I did not want to touch it on a great day like this, but any indications of new trading or checks and balances coming in for algo trades? What are the indications coming in from SEBI?
Currently, whatever has been discussed is in public. They had issued the paper, consultative paper, and they have already got feedback. They've also, I think, appointed some more experts and so on and so forth. So effectively, it's a much more advanced than what it was 6 months back, but also a little more understanding of algorithms is being developed at a variety of places. And what SEBI does is it's also part of IOSCO. So they also have discussions amongst the regulators internationally, and that's how they tend to come out with regulations, not only based on the feedback from our markets, but also experiences that have been gathered across the world.
Ashish Chauhan, once again, thanks a lot. It was a pleasure talking to you, and once again, congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ET NOW Live. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.